Okay, 24 hours away from a photo shoot. Well, just inside 24 hours away from a photo shoot. Last shoot I had loads of questions about the kind of behind the scenes stuff. Of course, everyone sees the amazing photos at the end of it, but they don't often see the, the sacrifice and the less glamorous side, if you will. So this video is intended to give you all of the details and will potentially at times be a little bit embarrassing. But fuck it, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm always honest and transparent about the behind the scenes stuff, because looking good on camera is one thing, but seeing all the stuff that goes into it is very, very different, and people are less likely to talk about it. So, quick background. Originally, a friend of mine opened a gym locally in Whitney. He asked if I wanted to do an out of hours photo shoot. Thought it was a good idea. Wasn't in photo shoot shape at the time, so just thought I'd do a mini diet and shoot there. Why not? Gives me something to focus on. I like doing them periodically just to give me that extra kick up the arse, although I consider myself pretty dedicated anyway. So I emailed my photographer, Matt Marsh, who I've shot with a couple of times. Incredible photographer, always comes up with brilliant photos. He was keen on doing it. Long story short, closer to the time, the shoot actually had to get postponed for reasons outside of our control. And then in the end decided on using a different gym. Now, kindly, a friend of mine at EP Gym in Banbury, or Elite Performance in Banbury, has let me use his gym, so we'll be shooting there. Now, because I've arranged this photo shoot with Matt, I've also arranged a photo shoot with someone called Gary Holmes, who I shot with years and years ago. Very, very different type of photo. Rather than being very gym focused and very flexed and angry and all of that, Gary is much more kind of artistic and softer photos. But because I, only diet aggressively every, let's say, year to a year and a half, I like the idea of having a couple of photo shoots at the same time and kind of kill two birds with one stone. So there's the kind of background. Now, with my last photo shoot, which was about 18 months ago now, it was the best condition that I've ever been in. I dieted harder than I've ever dieted before, and I felt like shit. There's no two ways about it. I was consistently running on high doses of caffeine, using them for kind of appetite suppressing effects. I was tired all the time. My NEAT, otherwise known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, went down, which basically means how much you move in your day-to-day life. So, for example, rather than sitting down, I would often find myself lying down or putting my feet up. Rather than standing, I'd find myself sitting more or leaning against things. Even in the gym, caloric expenditure goes way down. It's much harder to push yourself hard. I'd often find myself sitting down between sets because I felt lightheaded or like I was going to faint. So yeah, this is not supposed to be as aggressive a diet as it was last time. Because although I achieved, in my opinion, good conditioning for me, it was interesting to see how everyone's opinion differed. So although I had really good definition in terms of, abs, back, torso, whatever, a lot of people said, well, actually, you don't look healthy because your face goes a little bit more gaunt. So although the photos, to me, were amazing, I loved them, day-to-day life, people kept telling me how ill I looked, which of course isn't ideal. Someone very kindly pointed out that they thought I looked like a victim of a prisoner of war camp, which, believe it or not, wasn't the look I was going for. So yeah, this is a much more mild diet. I'm in decent condition. No one's going to say that I'm out of condition, but I have not pushed myself as aggressively as it is before. So it's kind of interesting who you're doing it for, because last time I felt like I was doing it for me, pushing harder and harder and harder. But in the end, a few people at least said they thought that I almost went too far and it became less attractive, at least on a day-to-day basis. Of course, it's always for me, but it does give you something to think about. So this is going to be the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm going to cover tanning, hair removal, all the kind of embarrassing stuff. Right now, I have no fake tan on. I've had a couple of sunbeds over the last fortnight or so. When I wax, I epilate regularly to remove torso hair, so I don't have to wait to let it grow. Because I get a few spots on my torso, I do find that a couple of sunbeds anecdotally seems to help. So although I judge myself for using them and I prefer not to use them, I do tend to go on a couple of sunbeds leading up to a photo shoot. but I have no fake tan on at the moment. I'll do a couple of coats in the next 10 hours or so. I'll remove the hair from my arms. There's not any on my torso that needs removing at the moment. So yeah, that's the kind of gist. At the moment, I'll give you a little bit of an idea of my conditioning, and then you'll see how it is once I've tanned and how much of a difference that can make. So this is my good arm. This is my injured arm, which you can see I find it much harder to flex than this one. This one I can hold a consistent flex, whereas this one, it tends to be a little bit almost like it flickers on and off. Also, I can't supinate and pronate my forearm as much, which might make posing a little bit difficult. In terms of, I'll show you my abs. You've got some kind of ab condition. The autofocus might go in and out, but you'll see where I am at the moment. So it's not incredibly lean, and it's not as lean as I was last time, but you know, it will still make a good photo, and I don't feel as shit as I did last time, which is a big plus. So yeah, that's it. I'll keep you updated, do little mini clips in terms of tanning and stuff like that. So for the moment, over and out. So I've always hated the idea of hair removal on my arms, and one of the first shoots I ever did was with Toby Harrison in Panthers Gym in Uxbridge, and Sean, the owner of the gym, who works with the UK BFF, came over to me afterwards and said, "Oh, you know, you're in really good shape. Do you ever compete?" And we had a bit of a chat. And long story short, he said to me, "Oh, you would have looked a lot better if you had shaved your arms," which is something that at the time I just never really considered. I just thought, you know, you have to have a lean, have to have no hair on your abs to make that look lean. But yeah, I hadn't really factored about taking the hair off my arms. But you know, like when you're dieting and you're trying to look as good as possible, it seemed like it was almost silly not to do it if it was just that tiny kind of little last step. So as much as I hate doing it, it's like it's kind of, I know it sounds silly, but it's like the last little bit of masculinity I have left. Like once you've taken all the hair off your torso, having some body hair somewhere. So yeah, it feels like the last little bit, and especially for me, because it makes no difference. I don't give a shit whether there's hair on my arms or not. But you know, if you're dieting hard and you spend 12 weeks dieting or whatever, of course you want the photos to look as good as possible. So as much as I hate it, it's just something I've got used to doing now, unfortunately. But the interesting thing is, once you do it, it does make a surprising difference to how your arms look. And it wasn't something that I ever really thought about. You know, I thought, who's really paying attention to your forearms? Apart from the one guy who sent me a message on Facebook saying my wrists look underdeveloped and maybe I should change my profile picture. True story, by the way, that did happen. But yeah, I just thought, oh, you know, no one ever really is going to pay attention to your forearms in a photo. They're always looking at your, you know, abs and stuff like that. But you will see, and I'll show you in a sec, how much of a difference it does actually make. So if I stop there, I haven't done that arm completely, but actually I'll do a tiny bit more and then I'll show you. I'll need to take my watch off and do the rest, but if I show you the difference now, so this hair on the forearms and then this, you'll notice you get a lot more definition on the arms, there to there. The light maybe isn't brilliant to see it, but trust me when I say that you can see maybe on, like, say, the back of my arms there versus here if it's shaved. So although it's not the best light to see it, trust me when I say it does make a huge difference. So yeah, my clippers didn't quite finish the job off, so I've been resorted I have to resort to wet shaving the last little bit, just because you know, if you're going to shave your arms, you may as well do it fucking properly, and having stubbly arms look weird anyway. So it feels strange shaving your arms, so doing it with a wet razor is only really a tiny bit more weird, isn't it? Let's be honest. So fuck it. This feels weird as fuck. I'll get a video in a better light so you can see the difference between having like hair on one arm and hair on another. So if I point this camera down and you can see, so the hair on this arm isn't actually very long because I'd originally prepped for the photo shoot a month or so ago. So this isn't as long as it would be normally, but if you see this, even though it's shorter than it is normally, compare that arm to this, then you'll just notice a lot more kind of muscle detail than you will on this one. You'll see the kind of difference there. So you'll see why, you know, even though this is my slightly smaller and injured arm, you'll see how much of a difference it makes. And the difference would have been even more pronounced originally when my arm hair is as long as it would be normally. But even though it's probably only half of what it is, it does make a massive difference. So you understand why people remove hair. In fact, I've always said to people that if you want to look as lean as possible, as quickly as possible, the best thing you can do is remove all your torso hair and get a tan, because it does make that much difference. And when I put my tan on later, you'll see what I mean. So I've been to Boots to buy my tan. Tanning is very, very important. I have one massive tip when it comes to tanning, and that is always use or always practice with the product you're going to use prior to the big shoot. So the first shoot I ever did, I thought I was very tanned at the time, and I went in and on the actual professional photos I came out and actually looked quite pale. So then on my next photo shoot, obviously because they use lights and flashes and things like that, it can often make you look washed out. So on my next photo shoot I went even darker. Now the problem with that is when you're going very dark is what do you do with your face? So imagine that you've got, you know, mahogany brown tan everywhere. When you get to your face, do you go lighter or do you rub it on your face as well? Because if you rub it on your face, it kind of gets caught up with the, you know, facial hair and the stubble, which can make your face look a little bit dirty, which my shoot did last time. So it's massively, massively important to experiment with tans first. I've used a lot of fake tans in the past, which is probably not the most masculine thing I'm ever going to say. But yeah, I've used a lot of fake tans in the past, and some of them look good, but then they run or they streak when you sweat, which of course on a photo shoot is inevitable. Some of them, you might find they look good when they go on, but the next day, you know, you have marks or whatever. So you have to get something that looks consistent. So for me, the one that I've got is actually just this. I've used it before. It's one of the cheapest ones they've got. It sprays on as a mist and it goes on really consistently. You don't have to rub it in or anything like that. A lot of the ones I've had before, when I've rubbed them in, were prone to streaking, say where the edges of your fingers were or whatever, like whatever you're using. Hello. So yeah, because it can often streak, I prefer to use a mist, and this product was only about £9, and I prefer doing that than buying a product online, say one of the professional kind of contest tanning products, if I've got no idea what they're like. So at least with this one, you know, I try something cheap. If it works, then I haven't lost that much money. So yeah, there's the tanning product. I'll be applying a coat in a couple of hours or so, and then probably another one before bed. So I'll keep you updated. So I've put the first layer of fake tan on. I will see how things look in the morning. I might need to put another one on then. But you know, for the moment it's fine. It will get a bit darker over the next few hours or so. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how I look. And also, as I'm about to flex and you can kind of compare it to earlier, it will show you how much of a difference there is in relaxed, kind of how someone looks when they're relaxed and how someone looks when they're flexing. Because, you know, if I was talking to someone now, it's not like I look particularly ripped or shredded or anything like that, but when you flex, it will make a big difference. And obviously when you're doing it with professional photos, with lighting and shadow and things like that, it will look significantly better. So at the moment, this is my physique, and this will basically be how I look in the photo shoot. Yet when the photos come out, I will look, you know, significantly more defined than I do at the moment, because shadows are accentuating it and light's accentuating it, and I'll be holding weights and flexing as much as possible. So in my kind of relaxed state, if I relax my stomach as much as possible, it's not like I'm particularly lean compared to how you would look in professional photos. So this lighting's terrible. It makes my forehead look really white because it's glaring down on me. But if I give you a little idea of how it looks compared to earlier, I can't wear a t-shirt because it'll stick to the tan. So again, the lighting's really terrible because it's so bright, it's actually quite hard to see the tan. But it does make a massive difference in terms of muscle definition. This is especially true in photo shoots or if you're on stage, because you've got bright lights, flashes, reflectors, etc. I'll show you my stomach as a comparison. So again, not massively shredded. I'm definitely not in the best condition that I've ever been, but I'm in decent enough condition for a photo shoot, and I've dieted pretty comfortably, relatively speaking, to my last photo shoot. So yeah, basically that's it. That's it for tonight. I'll wake up and see how things look in the morning. Quick tip about tanning: don't ever wear white. I've made this mistake before. I had to literally throw out a white t-shirt because it was so dirty I couldn't clean it. Also, this applies to bed sheets. If you've got white bed sheets, white pillowcases and stuff like that, and you've put fake tan on, they're going to be fucking disgusting the next day. Trust me on that. It's amazing how much comes off. It is gross. Also, it's kind of funny. People talk about this tanning epidemic because people get so addicted to tanning that you get more and more people on nights out that are looking browner and browner than they were a few years ago. Funnily enough, after my last photo shoot, I was much browner than I was now. And it looks good for the camera, but it looks ridiculous in person. And I looked so dark that I was actually embarrassed. So I went to the gym on the way back from the photo shoot because I was in a kind of, you know, had a lot of adrenaline going. I was feeling quite positive. But I was so embarrassed with how dark my skin was when I went in there that I just kind of kept my head down and tried to ignore everyone. And these two girls came over to me in the middle of the gym and said, "Excuse me, you know, sorry to interrupt." They said, "Are you wearing fake tan?" You know, they'd seen me around before, but we'd never really spoken. And I was like, "Yeah, why?" Thinking they're going to comment on how stupid I looked. And actually said, "Oh, I think it looks really good." And I was like, I look fucking ridiculous. But it gives you an idea of, you know, some people like a lot of fake tan. You know, is what it is. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. So yeah, for tonight that's it. No special dinners, nothing like that. I'm not at I'm not an extreme level of conditioning that I think it really matters, if I'm honest. I'm just kind of cruising into the shoot, feeling pretty good. I'll wake up in the morning, have a standard breakfast, get my supplements ready that I take pre-photo shoot just to improve vascularity and things like that. And that's basically it. So all the hard work's done now. Looking forward to tomorrow. Always pretty exciting. Always struggle to sleep the night before a shoot because I get quite excited. But yeah, for the moment, that's it. Over and out. Right guys, so morning of the shoot, I'm leaving in about 45 minutes. Not that much to explain this morning, I'm just going to go through my kind of prep. So, I will eat whatever breakfast I'm going to eat. Today it's just going to be a normal breakfast, nothing untoward. everything I need to get ready. So change of clothes. When you're on a shoot, are you always going to be topless? Are you going to wear gym wear, trousers, shorts, whatever? Any changes of clothes, plus a change of clothes for afterwards, because if you get sweaty, you want to shower or whatever. I will take resistance bands depending on the location of a shoot. If it's location or studio shoot, sometimes they're nice to use to, you know, pump up prior to a shoot. If you're in a gym, then obviously there's no worry. Food, it's nice to be able to take snacks. Some people have a bit of a ritual eating shortly before a shoot, you know, carbohydrate ingestion prior to a shoot, things like that. So take snacks with you. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to nibble as the shoot goes on, because they do sometimes go on for a surprisingly long time. That's pretty much it. Supplements, I take 2 scoops of this about 30 to 45 minutes prior to a shoot, which will just help increase vascularity. It will bring veins out, and it makes a big difference. I've played around with a lot of supplements over the years. I kind of found there was a ceiling with it, so I used to throw the kitchen sink at it and you'd get a decent, say, pump effect, but there was a limit. And for me, although I've actually used multiple products before, but for me 2 scoops of that is the most noticeable that I can get. Going more than that just ends up being more expensive with no noticeable benefit. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Tan on the whole is pretty even. If you do it yourself, or even if you get, you know, a professional spray tan, you will wake up in the morning and think it's not quite even there, it's not quite even there. So I think the worst one for me is I noticed this morning, so that looks fine. And then if you turn it that way, look at that hand, it's like ebony and ivory all in one go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing else to explain, nothing else that needs doing. Just time for me to eat breakfast, leave, get my stuff ready, and yeah, get on the way. So that's it. Okay, so we are a few days post-shoot now. Originally, when I did the photo shoot, I thought the whole point of this video is to do the pre-photo shoot build-up. So the tanning, the hair removal and stuff like that. And then I thought about it and I thought, what's the logical end to that video? I just end it on the last video you saw. And I realised that it didn't really make sense. So what I thought would be a really good idea is, because you saw the tanning, the build-up, the hair removal, most importantly you saw how I looked in standard lighting with this camera with no effects. So I actually thought the best way to finish this is to go through the photo selection, which means that you guys can see, 1, what the photos look like completely unedited, 2, which ones I picked, differences between them, stuff like that, 3, the final edited ones, and then 4, a side-by-side comparison edited to unedited. Because there is editing that goes into photos. Now, Matt doesn't edit as much as a lot of photographers. I've seen some photographers where their photos look so over-engineered that I think it actually ruins the photo, because they make anyone look amazing. Whereas for Matt, if you go in good shape, you'll get amazing photos, but he's not going to make you look like a cartoon, which some photographers I personally think are guilty of. So I have my laptop here. What I'll do is flip the camera around, set it up in front of this, and then go through the photos, describe the differences so you guys can see how everything went. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is going to work from an autofocus perspective. You might see the camera going in and out. Anyway, here it is. So this is the first album of raw photos. There's a lot of them, so I will go through quickly. Now, what you'll see are very, very subtle differences between each of them. Some of them are very good physique-wise, some of them are good physique-wise, but then you've got a shit facial expression, which is very common with me. Some of them you'll have a decent facial expression, but the lighting on your physique isn't good, or you're not flexing a certain part of it, for example. But you'll see a very, very subtle differences. There's a lot of photos to pick from, and sometimes it's a case of picking the best out of the bunch, because you might have one that's a little bit better in terms of, say, ab definition, but then isn't maybe quite as good in terms of facial expression. Or you might have one that's better in terms of ab definition, but you're forgetting to flex your bicep, for example. So yeah, if I just run through these fast, yeah, you'll see some examples of where my physique doesn't look better or my physique looks good but I've got a poor facial expression. These back photos are a really good example of differences in lighting because you can see how much of a difference there is. Okay. So at the moment we're probably 2/3 of the way through the album. Not much longer, but I'll go through all of them. And that way you can see how much of a difference there is. That one's a good example of lighting differences, which is why you have to make sure the lighting's set up perfectly. Some of them you can see they're very, very bright on the torso, which is the importance of tan, because once the flash is on you and once the reflectors are on you, your torso can look very washed out, as you can see on those last ones where it's very, very white on my chest and on my face. Okay, so we're pretty much at the end now. I'll go through it all so you can see all the poses. You also see the kind of outtakes because there are some ridiculous photos here. Ridiculous photos in here with horrendous facial expressions. Okay. And then we're on to almost the last pose where we used a deadlift or a shrug machine, which will come up in just a second. And then we're going to be at the end. These ones are just ones that are taken in the mirror with a similar pose at the beginning. And then these are the final ones. Okay. Is that a lot? Almost. There we go. So, that's the lot in terms of raw photos. Now, what I've done is brought up some comparison photos so you can see the difference between the raw ones and the final ones. So for example, that is a raw photo, and then that's a final photo. So what you can see is the kind of washed out physique on the torso. This is slightly worse looking through the camera than it is looking on the screen. It's darker on my screen than it is on the camera, but you can see exactly where there's a problem with the lighting. So raw photo, edited photo. Slightly darker, slightly sharper contrast. Nothing that's essentially photoshopped in terms of changing dimension. I've got no interest in trying to make my, arms look bigger, chest look rounder or anything like that. It's basically just lighting and colouring. So, raw one, you see very, very pale. And you can see all the lines that are accentuated but existed there already. The other thing is, you might be able to see on this, but if you look on my stomach, you'll see slight speckles from where I've had hair removal. But when they are smoothed over in the final photos, my skin will look much better. I get quite a few blemishes and things like that on my chest, as I've explained before. Now this one, all of these are raw photos, but I wanted to show you the difference in lighting. So there's no editing on these photos at all, as you can see from the bottom right. So, decent lighting, better lighting, sharper contrast, and then bang. You've got one where the light is fully on me, there's no flexing or anything like that. And the difference in condition between that and that makes a huge, huge difference. So that just goes to show why I always say you should never ever judge people's physiques from professional photos, because if you saw this photo of me and you thought my back looked like that in real life, realistically, if I'm not actually flexing and I'm not under perfect lighting with, reflectors and flashes and stuff, I'm more likely to actually look like this, which is a huge difference. And then this one again. So raw and edited. Slight sharpening of the lines, slightly darker in terms of the tan, slightly more shadow, but all of the actual shape is exactly the same. There's no accentuating, there's no, make my shoulders bigger, chest bigger, whatever. So those are some comparison photos. And then these are the final selection. So I'll go through them all here, and then I'll zoom up and add them to the end of the video so you can see the proper ones rather than looking at them through the camera. There we go.